Well, 'tis the season for another border crisis, or should we say, an escalated border crisis. Things are getting unmanageable, even more unmanageable, down on the US Mexico border. Our own partner in crime, Julio Rosas, over there at our sister site, townhall.com, recently checked it out firsthand, and he joins us now. Julio, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Larry.
I said it's a season. It does seem like this is cyclical and seasonal, and it seems like toward the end of the year and into January, there's another buildup of these caravans. Am I wrong? Is this a coincidence?
No, not really, because you have to understand that in Mexico, the way that things happen down there is that a lot of migrants that they're not originating in Mexico, and so they are also illegally traveling through that country, and so they have to get permission, is essentially these travel documents, to be able to travel through Mexico to get to the U.S. border, and so that kind of builds up over time, and then Mexico typically then hands out these travel documents, which then kind of creates like a backflow that then
I
gets
see.
released kind of all at once. And so that's kind of what has been happening for many decades. But what it's just happening a lot more now because there's more people traveling through Mexico trying to get to the United States.
Well, and the numbers down at the border are absolutely astounding. I've seen your videos, I've seen your colleagues. I know there's like this little cadre of video journalists who go down there and cover this stuff, and you're somewhat alone. You don't see any of the big broadcast networks down there with you, Julio. But it looks like another just massive humanity with huge humanitarian implications. These are children, these are women, and this is not safe. What's the latest reason for this push?
Well, it's because Title 42 is going away on Wednesday. As of right now, there is a chance the Supreme Court can intervene. When that sort of happened at a lower court when it was supposed to go away back in May. And
Uh
so
huh.
right now, what's happening is that mostly Venezuelans are staying in Mexico because Title 42 has largely applied to them. But the people that have been crossing into El Paso, which is where I was most recently at, was they were from Nicaragua, Colombia, Ecuador, just all these other different areas. And so that is why it is a lot of people are concerned at the border that once Title
Yeah.
42 goes away, the rest of the nationalities that have not been able to enter the country because of Title 42 will now take that opportunity to try to enter uh, within the next couple of weeks. And it's by no exaggeration, literally thousands of people, tens of thousands that are expected to do that.
Julio, do you know if they are aware of the way this story has transpired over the last year, with governors of Florida and Texas and Arizona actually busing many of these illegal crossers up into other cities in the country? Is that what they're hoping for, basically?
Well, so it depends because obviously when people are on the road, they don't necessarily have up to date information, especially with all the kind of the nuances that are happening within American politics. I will
Yeah,
say that the Biden administration has tried to blame Abbott and Arizona Governor Ducey for basically saying incentivizing people to come, which is laughable on its face because that that's kind of the end result, right? Like, people aren't coming
right.
because they hear about Texas. They hear because they hear about federal immigration laws and the changes that have been made or policy changes to policies from the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that a lot of people who are sleeping on the streets of El Paso right now because the shelters are overrun. They would definitely like a bus ride out of there because they're trying to get on to their next destination.
Let's pause on that for a moment, Julio, because I think it's important to dwell on the fact that we hear from Democrats, we hear from Kamala Harris and other thought leaders, people who host late night comedy shows, saying that Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and Doug Ducey, they're using these people as political pawns by putting them on a bus and sending them to New York or DC or Martha's Vineyard. But if they're not being put on those buses, they are literally sleeping on the streets of San Antonio and El Paso and other border cities right now. That's what you're seeing. They're basically human debris filling up the streets in an incredibly unsafe and unsanitary way. I mean, who's really using them as political pawns here?
Exactly, and that's why this whole kind of rhetoric coming from the White House saying that their approach to the border is more humane and more compassionate is just simply not true because not only have they incentivized people to come
Yeah.
through this very dangerous way, through the elements, through the criminal organizations, through disease, through sickness. But if they don't have a sponsor in the United States already waiting for them, they're left with very little option, and they actually end up homeless. And that actually, like what we're seeing in El Paso right now, is draining the
Yep.
resources for U.S. citizens who are homeless in that city. So it's a very tragic, it's a very uh, in my opinion, an avoidable situation. But
Yeah.
this is where we're at right now, and governors have tried to respond to that.
By the way, this is also these people who are left vulnerable and living on the streets with nowhere to go and very little resources. It makes them very vulnerable to be brought into gangs, and this is what actually adds to the criminal element here too. Julio, we've heard from Karine Jean-Pierre and other Democrats who are saying that the Trump administration they gutted the border protection agencies. The Republicans refused to spend enough money to fix the problem of the border. You have contacts with the Border Patrol and the people who actually do the hard work of trying to manage this. Does that square with what your sources tell you?
No, because when they say that they gutted these institutions, what they're really saying is that they didn't expand capacity within the Border Patrol facilities to hold thousands of people, because there was no reason to build such facilities
They
because there
didn't
was not
need
that many
to.
people in
Yeah,
custody. And so
right.
they did build, again, in El Paso, they did build out this one processing center during the Trump years. It was supposed to hold, it was never supposed to be filled, and the capacity is 1,000 people. Well, right
Yeah.
now it's at 4,000 people, again, it's just because so many people are willingly, illegally crossing and turning themselves in. So it's a bit of a bait and switch with that kind of talking point from the White House and from Democrats. Is just the fact that the Border Patrol facilities and HHS facilities were never designed to handle this large amount of people, because the large amount of people were never supposed to be there in the first place.
Based on your last visit to the where you just got back a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Based on your last visit, what is it looking like in terms of compared to other times you've seen rushes on the border? Number one, just in terms of volume, but also in terms of the danger for these individuals who have made this treacherous. I mean, these are thousands of miles they've trekked from their countries down in Central and South America.
I mean, I can tell you that it's certainly a lot more stark compared to, early on in the border crisis last year. I mean, I was surprised to come across over 200 people within 3 hours, and now we're coming across 1,000 people at a single time. So it's not slowing down. It might reach a point if this is were to continue, and not to say that it should, but if it were to continue, sure, we might see a slowdown, just because there's no more people to come. But where we are right now is untenable for a variety of
Challenging.
reasons. But also just the fact that this has affected Mexico as well. I mean, I have a friend down in Monterrey, which is a big city in Mexico, and their local officials were saying that it was draining their resources as well. So
Sure.
this is a multi nation issue when it comes to incentivizing people to come in this
Yeah.
way. This is what the Biden administration has done.
By the way, for everything the Trump administration got, all the heat they got about, supposedly demonizing the Mexican government and the people of Mexico, this is no way to treat your neighbor. What the Biden administration is doing right here, they're making matters worse in the country of Mexico right now because of their policies. It sounds real fast. What about the morale of the Border Patrol agents? I know you have very good contacts there and sources, and you interact with them on a regular basis. They've got to be just at the breaking point.
No, they definitely are, and they are just kind of taking it day by day. They are definitely not looking forward to what happens after Wednesday. I mean, it's very demoralizing for them for many reasons, and also just because a lot of them have served for a long time. They've been through multiple administrations. I mean, they even say that Obama was at least somewhat better. At least at least he tried to
Well,
act like he cared about border security. And so the fact that
well, and he had a
they've gone
Republican.
from
Yeah. He had real fast 'cause we're out of time. He had a Republican majority to keep him in check in the House, and that starts 2 weeks from now. And that's another reason why we're seeing this crisis happen right before that. Julio Rosas, we got to leave it there. Thanks for doing the job for Town Hall, a job that other journalists in other organizations appear not interested in doing. More to come on O'Connor tonight.